Hey guys, how's it going? It's your boy M.K.S. back here with another video. Sorry, the cat's just I had him on my shoulder and he's tight off, so try and put this back on without him falling. Sorry about this. Sorry if it's a bit dark, but he just I wondered why, but he turned the light off. But there you go. It's working, thank goodness. Okay. Technical issues. Working with children and animals is always difficult, they say, apparently. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. This is obviously part 3 of my plans to unify Asia and Africa through Egypt, symbolically, because Egypt is the only country between, which is part of both Africa and Asia, if I'm not mistaken. Please drop any comments you can think of below, anything you want to comment. And here goes. So these are ideas, pointers, thoughts, plans, or whatever you want to call them, number 21 to 30. On that note, if you can give me any suggestions on how to promote these ideas, how to get politicians in Africa and Asia, in and across and around Asia and Africa and whatnot, to implement these ideas, please again post below any in the comment section, and either on Facebook or on YouTube, any suggestions you have. Oh, as I say, anything you want to comment. So I think that covers everything for the intro. Please check out parts 1 and 2 if you haven't already done so, and also look out for part 4 if you'd be so kind. I hope to make it tonight, possibly after my shower, because I'm going to have a late shower as usual. I always make the mistake of going to sleep late and waking up late, but wondering why. So I never seem to learn. And I never seem to learn how to not waffle. Sure there's something I was going to say, but I'm going to move on anyway. So here goes. So number 21, I would love for Asian and African nations to learn about each other's histories, cultures, traditions, and things like that, and look at what they can learn from each other, and that kind of thing. And to recap some of the points I made, I hope they'll help each other with trade and investment and that kind of thing. And also, I'd love to encourage people from Africa and Asia to support and follow Italian teams, Serie A teams, and Celtic as much as possible. So I hope to promote Serie A and Celtic across Asia and Africa, and for each other to learn about each other's histories. I'd love for them to have like Facebook groups, again recapping some of the ideas I covered in parts 1 and 2, for them to network on Facebook. I was going to say on Facebook in Africa, then Facebook and YouTube and Zoom, and to organize such events. They could use Zoom. They could use Facebook, to talk about about Zoom groups they could make. So I'm not doing very well here, but I wondered when I saw that light go off. I wondered what happened. I thought something had happened to the power or something. I was like, what's going on here? But I just realised that because the cat was on my shoulder, he must have reached up and turned it off. But anywho, and we have a strange sort of system with our electrics and stuff like that in this house. But anyway, moving on, number 22, I hope that Asian and African nations can look at what they can do in the future, what they can achieve by trusting and loving and supporting each other. As I say, many hands make light work, and I think they're stronger together. Hashtag stronger together. Teamwork makes the dream work, as I say, and things like that as well. And I hope Egypt can host many events between African and Asian nations, inviting as many politicians, delegates, business people, even rival politicians, governments, and diplomats, and so on and so forth, to Egypt to discuss with each other what each other's goals are, how they can work towards those goals, and to end or at least limit divisions across Asia and Africa as much as possible. And as ever, as I say, if you do have any suggestions on each of these points or whatever you think, again, please do comment below. Number 23, I would love to tackle poverty in Africa and Asia. That could be some of the talking points. In the future, maybe I'll talk about 40 potential events they could host in Egypt between African and Asian nations. So the AU, the African Union, that is, and a new Asian alliance, which I hope to make, which would be based in Central Asia and Central Africa, respectively. I'd love for them to discuss human rights, tackling poverty, animal rights, how to tackle animal abuse, how to keep children safe, including online, how to tackle wars, and how having less conflict and less wars means, for one thing, they could build more and grow more rather than destroy things and have to rebuild things. Another thing is it could lead to more tourism, which could also lead to more prosperity. It would also mean they have to spend less on wars and weapons trade and things like that, so they could spend more of that money on tackling poverty, tackling youth employment and other such issues, and just generally helping each other and benefiting each other's countries. Number 24, again, they could have lots of different events. And as an anti-imperialist, which is I suppose the main reason why I'm doing these videos, and why I cover a lot of stuff I do, other than the football stuff, I suppose, or pretty much all the stuff up to now has probably been anti-imperialism, pretty much, other than football stuff, generally speaking. But as an anti-imperialist, I say I would love to bring anti-imperialists around the world together. And again, African and Asian nations could talk about what's best for each nation, and they could end or at least limit divisions and hopefully prevent them as much as possible by talking, by dialogue, diplomacy, and things like that. For instance, rivalry between Ethiopia and Eritrea, and Ethiopia and Somalia, maybe if the leaders and politicians and diplomats, delegates and all that kind of thing from those countries talk together, they can talk about what they want, and then intermediaries, or again diplomats, could come together and talk about how they can put aside their differences and things like that. And similar with China and India. Another thing is, I would love for them to go to look at like pre-colonial borders. I suppose before colonialism, there probably weren't any or many borders between different African and Asian nations, respectively. So I think it'd be cool if they looked at like ways to unify in a peaceful way, hopefully without any bloodshed or any violence at all. Controversial idea, but to unify like China and Hong Kong and Taiwan and other places which used to be one nation, and like look at how they can come together to mutual benefit and how that can make peace. And I suppose as a Pan-Africanist and Pan-Asianist, especially, I would love to see how to take the Asian side and African side respectively. So how to bring China and Hong Kong and Taiwan, Japan and others, China and India, for instance, together and that kind of thing. Again, they can look at what their similarities and differences are and what their arguments are about, and maybe a diplomatic group can come in and say there's a peaceful resolution to this, and maybe China could talk about what they want, and Taiwan could talk about what they want, Hong Kong could talk about what they want, Japan, India, and the rest of the Asian and African nations, respectively, Ethiopia, Somalia, Kenya, and all the other African and Asian nations. And therefore, once they've been heard, hopefully they can say, oh, we can sort of make a compromise and an Asian alliance, and I think the African Union should do something similar, and again, they could work together, should look at what's in the best interests of the most possible people across Africa and Asia, respectively, preferably both, and in this case, and there could be a lot of diplomacy done in Egypt that could look at how to bring these nations together and prevent conflict in both great continents as much as possible. So I'm just looking at my cat there in reflection. He seemed to have been frozen in time there, but it was the other cat who turned right off, and now he's messing with the other light. But anyway, sorry, going back on topic. So with China and India, for instance, I just want to say before I move on to the next point, they have a disputed territory. I think it's called the Galwan Heights in the Himalayas. But I think, and I know it's something I've mentioned quite a few times on this channel, and just generally, but I would love to see that area being used instead to sort of help China and India to have diplomacy and network together and trade together and discuss issues, tackle potential invasions, tackle and any other such threats, and look at how China and India can cooperate, how their businesses can work together, and that kind of thing. Another thing I think they can work together on, again, just before I move on, sorry, one more point on that one, is medical aid. They can learn, and science. They can look at what they can learn from each other and how to prevent diseases as much as possible, cure illnesses, and all sorts of great things like that. Number 25, most of Asia and almost all of Africa are republics, and I would love to encourage republicanism, which is my preferred system of government, and look at how republics can network together. Again, another event they could have is bringing republics together, which could also help them to network with most of, or certainly a lot of Latin America and other parts of the world as well, and maybe even Republican supporters, people who support Republic supporters around the world could visit Egypt and parts of Asia and Africa to talk about the benefits of republicanism, i.e. republics. Number 26, I'll say as an anti-imperialist, I would love to encourage anti-imperialists like POC or minorities or whatnot to go to support parts of Asia and Africa as anti-imperialists. And what Asian and African nations have in common is most of them, if not all, pretty much, were colonized, and in many cases, if not enslaved, and put into indentured labor. Someone said to me a while back, or typed up a while back, that they didn't see me as mixed race because they were saying something about they only see people who are part black and part white, and they said that something about like they are the slave master and the slave at the same time. But I think a lot of people don't realize that Indians were also in indentured labor, so that's one thing Asians and Africans have in common. It might not be quite the same as slavery, but they were, as well as being colonized, subjugated, ruled, and things like colonized. Sorry, I already mentioned that point. They were in indentured labor, and so were many other Asians, including the Chinese. So they do have that in common, and so I hope that will help to bring them even further together. In fact, I hope that's one of the main unifying points. The fact they were colonized, and maybe even white people who are against colonialism as well, maybe even white people who are anti-imperialists themselves could support Asian and African nations, perhaps. Number 27, as a reward, once again, I hope that I can promote Syria and Celtic as a reward for hopefully helping Asian and African nations, or at least trying to. Again, I hope I can promote Syria and Celtic and as many parts of Asia and Africa as possible, and basically I hope I can get as many Africans and Asians as possible to support Serie A teams and Celtic. In Serie A teams or Italian football, soccer case, I hope that they will tackle racism and improve relations. Celtic already does that, so hopefully that will be the reward, having more from Africa and Asia, respectively. Number 28, I hope this can turn many negative situations, as say like between Ethiopia and Somalia, Ethiopia and Eritrea, and other parts of Africa that are involved in civil wars or neighboring wars or things like that, and India and China, and maybe even India and Pakistan somehow. I hope at least the people in India and Pakistan, I'm sure most people in India and Pakistan don't want that division, so I hope I can limit that division across Asia and Africa generally as much as possible, though it's sometimes hard to see. But hopefully, again, the disputed territory between China and India could be used, instead of division, it could be used to unite them together. And disputed borders and territories and whatnot, and even places where they have civil war, could be used instead to encourage entrepreneurship and to help each other to trade and invest together and learn about each other's businesses and that kind of thing. Help each other to promote each other's businesses and help each other to brand and market and sell their goods, services and items and whatnot. Number 29, I hope to do a lot of projects to do with Eurasians as well, or people who are part Asian and or part African, like Blasians, which is another group I hope will visit Egypt, and also I hope people who are mixed race like myself, including people who are part black and part white, and especially those who are Blasians, as they part black and part Asians, will support Asian and African nations as much as possible. Like my fellow Eurasians, I would love to, and maybe even Blasians, I would love to look into ways they could help, especially Malaysian and Indian, Indonesian and Singaporean security, but even Asian and African nations generally. I hope we can support their security generally. And sorry about these mad cats in the background. And also I hope to promote neurodiversity, or showcase what neurodiverse people could do, which on that note, I'd love for Egypt to have events where people from Africa and Asia can learn about disabilities, different kind of minds, neurodiversity, physical disabilities and mental disabilities and that kind of thing. And again, what neurodiverse people can contribute to Asian and African nations through our unique ways of thinking. And number 30, recently I was thinking, if as people who I know were thinking of joining, were thinking of subscribing to my channel, it made me a bit conscious about some of the stuff I talk about, which is normally I put it in the adult sort of content, but sometimes I have some crude humor or whatnot, I talk about more adult things or confessions and stuff like that. So I was a bit wary, especially if young people watch my videos. So I'm a bit wary about that. But I was thinking of like, I don't think I'm going to say the full thing, what I mean, but BBY4WW or BBY4WC. So that's a sort of code thing that I'm a bit too shy to confess on Facebook and should I call YouTube, but I might express it one day. But again, some content I do, which is more adult, which I'm a bit conscious of because people who I know might be subscribed, and especially young people. So I'm a bit wary about that, but I want to try and be as honest as possible. But anyway, I'm going to stop waffling. This video has gone longer than planned because I normally like to keep them down to about 10 minutes. But as ever, please let me know any thoughts you have, suggestions, ideas, or whatever else you want to comment. And I think that covers everything. I'm sure I often think there's something I missed, but I am out. Peace and love.